a personal developer instance for free at developer.servicenow.com. We also have some other resources that I'd like to share with you. During this session, we will be using our mobile devices, and I invite you to download the Mobile Agent app for Android or iOS using the QR codes shown here if you like. We'll paste the URLs, the links in the chat if you like. So while you're downloading, or if you want to come back and watch this video later at your own pace and pause, that's perfectly fine. Go and download the demo data spreadsheet that we'll be using as well. So that's available at the link you could see on the bottom. It's just got some demo data that we're going to plug in here if you do want to follow along. We are streaming this live. Just want to point this out. So we are at the whim of any of the internet deities, the gremlins that are out there. So if something happens, this video will be made available on demand afterward. If you want to review anything, and I invite you, please share this with your colleagues and coworkers. If you have questions, feel free to ask them in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer them at the end of this broadcast. All right, here's our story. We have some very generous people at ServiceNow who've been making contributions to charity. And for the sake of this demonstration, we're going to say that ServiceNow is being kind and offering to match the contributions. So if I pledge $100 to my favorite charity, ServiceNow would kick in another. This may or may not be the use case for your organization, but don't get hung up on the fact that this is all about charity and my organization doesn't do that. The whole point of this is to guide you through building an application. The model, the architecture is going to be the same from app to app. So you could adapt this to visitor registration. You could adapt this to many simple organizational processes that you want to digitize as we go through this. So for the sake of this demonstration, we're going to do a charity application where we're going to do some approvals and some mathematics, because we got to double that up. So let me show you what the fictitious HR department is using today. They've got this spreadsheet that they've been using, and they've been jotting things down as they come in from email or wherever they are. And now there's some requirements that frankly go beyond what this spreadsheet can do. They're being asked to get approvals for anything over $100. They also have to get this into the finance system so that we can get this total contribution going. They also want an overall better way to track and maintain this. So we are going to build a cross-team workflow using App Engine Studio in the next few minutes, starting by importing the spreadsheet we downloaded earlier. So let's get started with my demo screen. And this is my personal developer instance. I'm logged into this. This is the free one that I got from developer.servicenow that you saw before. And I am going to get my cursor over here, get that on the right screen. If your screen doesn't look exactly like this, because we've done a couple of iterations where we've got the create app where you may see astronauts and spaceships, totally fine. You should see create app up here in the upper right. If you don't, you can always go over to the left navigator menu and type in App Engine Studio. Either way will work fine. So under App Engine Studio is there. I am going to take the big old create button, and this one actually asks me, do you want to do this declaratively with low code and no code? Yes, I do for the sake of this demonstration. Or we could go a little more advanced, but we're going to keep it simple today because this is a low code demonstration of how we can build an app quickly. And we wait for the demo gods to give us our screen. And while we do that, again, remind you, if you've got any questions, please put them in the chat. Okay, what we're seeing here is called App Engine Studio. This is one of our flagship products for 2021. And really what it does is it puts the power of creating an app into the hands of everyone. Because what we're trying to do is streamline the process of creating apps so that everyone can be a part of the digital transformation. If you're new to the platform or building apps, I invite you, take this tour. Take a look around, click the Get Started button, and learn how to do that. For the interest of time and this demo, I am going to close that. I will be your tour guide on this particular one. Now, App Engine Studio gives you a few different ways of starting. We can obviously click Create App up in the upper right corner that you see here. We could start manually at any point in this process. We can even work on some existing applications. I've got a few on my PDI that I've used in the past. And we also offer up templates for common use cases. For example, a time off template. Many of our customers have built these in the past, so we thought, let's make that a template. You can take this and basically build it, configure it, tweak it, tune it. It comes with all the tables you need, all the workflows, everything for your basic time off template. You could even install these apps multiple times on the same instance. Maybe HR has a different time off process than sales does. So you could take those and tune them to your particular needs. In the meantime, I'm going to show you the way we build this manually, because I think there's a little more value in seeing how these components all fit together. Let's go ahead and click Create App and give it a name. So we're going to call this unimaginatively the charity app for managing charity contributions. And I'm also going to give it a nice little icon, which shows up here so that when I see it in a list of applications, I see that. Now, if you don't have an icon, that's fine. It will make a clever design for you. And it creates a container for me, basically almost a box of things that I can build and put in that box that make up my application. Keeps them secure and separate from other applications, unless, of course, I want to explicitly share them. And the flow, App Engine Studio guides us through the process of building this application. I want to be careful about using that word flow. It has a specific meaning. But we'll start by building out the data. Where do we want to store this information that we're going to be using for our charity contributions? Then the experience. How do we want to present that information? Any automation around approvals, creating tasks, maybe even integrating with other systems, and the security that goes along with that. Those are the four basic tenets, the four basic building blocks of our application. Not so difficult when you break it down like that. I don't need a computer science degree to do this. So we are going to go to our application home. And the first thing it's going to say is, we've got nothing. So let's build out that data structure for you. Let's build out the tables. I am trying to click on something on the other screen because I want to watch the Q&A in case there is something in there that we need to maintain. All right. And it guides us right to the place where we want to point our cursor. App Engine Studio is really helping us do this. I can also click Add up here next to the word Data. So let's do one of both. Let's start in the middle. And I've got a few choices for building a table. I'm going to upload that spreadsheet that I was just looking at by clicking through here, get my spreadsheet, and it imports it, analyzes it real quick and says, aha, it looks like you've got some information. And I want to draw your attention to this checkbox that says import spreadsheet data, because I don't want to import this manually later. I want it to do it all at the same time. So I click continue. It takes a look at the spreadsheet, says I see some dates, I see some numbers, I see some stuff, and does a pretty good job, but not quite exactly what we wanted. We've got a few other things that we want to add to this because Excel doesn't offer us the same level of the capabilities when it comes to the different field types. For example, the charity, you type in a charity, it's a string, but it's not quite long enough. We've got some longer charities, so I'm going to extend that out to 80 characters. The status, heaven forbid we should have to type the status. No, we want that as a drop-down menu with some choices on it. And we're going to leave that as a choice. That's what we call our drop-down list, select list if you've done some other web development. The amount is an integer, that's fine. The date is a date. And down here, we've got the employee as a string. And if we leave that as a string, we're likely to get issues with data consistency. I could be Chuck Tomasi, I could be Charles Tomasi, I could be C. Tomasi. Don't let people type in their names. We want to take advantage of a table that's already on the system. We want to reference that record. So we're going to use a reference field. And the table we're going to use is called user. And if you simply type in user, you're going to see a lot of tables that have the word user in them. If you type in the user, one called, sys_user, that's the system user table. The list is still pretty long, but it brings up the right table because there are other tables that have sysuser in that name. So once I've referenced those, let's also create one more field. Let's put in comments because this is a system of record. We want to know what's happening at different times. So up here in the center, I'm going to hit add new field and type in comments. It automatically assigns it a backend name. And the type I'm going to use for that is journal. That allows me to create a field that's generally empty unless I type something in and then post it. And I'll show you how we're going to display that in a little bit. It's called a journal field. Now I've defined the fields that relate to the columns in that spreadsheet. Let's give it a name. And it's easy to say, hey, this is a donation, but the donation hasn't been made yet until the manager approves it. So I'm going to actually have two tables in here. Very handy to think about what your data structure is before you build it out. This is actually just a pledge. So Chuck pledges to donate to a charity. The system gives it a backend name, and I'm going to auto number these. You decide what your prefix is on yours. If you're talking about cases, it might be case. If you're talking about return goods authorizations, it could be an RMA, an RGA, whatever you decide what you want. A reference number is very handy. It's handy to auto number. You don't want to auto number. You don't necessarily need to auto number all records, but that reference number is handy rather than saying that donation that Jennifer made in December of 2019 to, what was it? Some housing thing? It's like, no, that's a terrible way to reference records. You might be able to search for some of that information. So it is now importing all the information from that spreadsheet, tabulating it up, putting it into our columns, figuring out the data types, referencing those users that we told, and it said, I created 6 fields for you. And we can also use this button down here, Edit Table, to go into the table builder if we need to do some further refinement of this. Again, gives you a guided tour option, which is very nice. I'm not going to take it because I've been here before. I recommend, again, if you haven't done that, here are the fields that are in my wonderful table, including some that the system created to keep track of who modified what and when, that kind of thing. Now notice up here on the choice, I've got 4 choices. I can click that and say, not quite the order I wanted them in because new should come before approval. Then complete and reject it. That looks great. I also don't want a field that says none, an option on my status. Who's ever heard of a status of none? That's just ridiculous. So let's say without none, and it will automatically pick the first one as my default value. So new is a good way to start a new record. Let's save that. Table builder, we'll look at it a little bit more. We'll add some fields to the next table that we're going to be building. I can also preview this table at any point. Let's take a quick look at it just to make sure our data got in from that spreadsheet. And it looks great. We could even tweak the list layout and the form layout, which we'll do really quick. And here are my records. Look, I've got 21 of them. It's a wonderful thing. But this layout isn't exactly what I want. So I can take any one of these field headers, go down to Configure List Layout, and normally we don't put things like comments in a list. And I'd like the employee, this is sort of an artistic ability thing. You decide, I'm sure you're going to have endless meetings about what columns need to go where. But this is the default for most users. So let's say we gave there. We'll just switch a few of those around. That's the default list layout for everybody, but they can also go over to this cog and create their own list layout to override what the system default is. If I poke my head into one of those records by clicking through the number, did some form layout for me, but it's not optimal. This is really a good starting point, I would say, because it had to make some judgment calls based on the field types and the field sizes. We are going to go over to the form menu and say Configure Form Design. And in the Form Designer, this allows me to do drag and drop. No need for CSS and HTML and JavaScript. This is drag and drop. This is as easy as it gets. I haven't written a line of code yet. Let's take step 1. Turn that top part into a right and left. So I've got a right side and a left side. Comments is a larger field. It should really go down into a 1-column layout. So by grabbing these little handlebars, I can drag the fields where I want. And I've noticed on some of the other forums on ServiceNow that the state or the status field usually goes in the upper right. Let's also just kind of line these up. The employee, the amount, the date, and the charity. There, that's looking better. I've got this whole entire section now that's empty, so I'll get rid of that with the X over on the far right. Then I can modify some of the attributes of those files to make them behave like I want. If we noticed over here, number should not be editable. I don't want people changing their reference number. So I open the cog icon next to number and say, that is a read-only field. From now on, nobody can type in that field. It will still show up, but it's read-only. Employee, let's make employee mandatory. If you don't have an employee, how do you know who made the donation? The charity, again, why are we making this if we don't specify who? And I lost the amount somewhere. Well, here it is over on the fields. Let's just drag that back out. I must have hit X somewhere. And let's make the amount mandatory as well. So 3 mandatory fields are read-only. I also like to just double check what this status field is. Default is new. They are in the right order. Drop down without none. I'm happy with that. Table Builder did us a fine job. Click Save. And form building is as easy as that. There's one other. I mentioned the comments as a journal field. Let's take the activity formatter over here on the left. Let's take that and drag that out so that as comments are made, as fields change, we can see the history of what that looks like. Again, if you've used ServiceNow in the past, you've probably seen some of these things and wondered, how did they get there? It's as easy as this. Your developers and your administrators are I'm kind of pulling the veil back. Let's go in here and reload our form, make sure that we have a nice, beautiful form that looks the way we expect it. And sure enough, right, left on top, read-only field number, mandatory fields. We can see from the asterisks next to the fields. And there's our activity. We can even put a comment in here. Here's a comment. It's not, we're still in the development instance. Post that, shows up down in the history. Pretty cool. Easy stuff. We have our pledges imported from that spreadsheet. We have officially knocked that spreadsheet off the map. Let's close that, and we'll do one more table. I mentioned the pledge versus the donation thing. The donation is simply going to hold a reference to the pledge and the amount, because the amount on the pledge might be $100, but the amount on the donation should be $200. So quickly, I go back up to table, add next to it, and this time I'm going to create a new table from scratch. Click continue and call this one donation, auto number. That is fine. There's nothing to import. Creates a basic table. Hasn't created any fields. I'm going to go to the table editor once again with edit table. Close that tour. I'm not taking it yet. And I need to add 2 fields. And I do that with this add new field on the bottom center. One is called pledge. I have forgotten to do this so many times, it's ridiculous. I forget to hook these 2 records together. This is what gives us a reference from one table to another, and it really gets powerful when I'll show you some reporting or data visualizations in a little bit. Now, over on the type, this is going to be a reference similar to what I picked before. So I type in ref and then pledge. There's only one table on the system called pledge. If I forgot this table, I would just have 2 separate tables with no related information. Relational databases. Add another field. This will be our amount where the donation was made. The total, that's going to be an integer. And that's all I really need. Let's save that. I'm going to do a quick preview on it as well. And I could do the list layout thing and the form layout, but I'm not going to do that twice. You already saw it once. What I am going to do is create a couple of demo records so that I've got something when I get to my dashboard. Okay. So I'll click New, and the first donation is going to be connected to Pledge 1001. When I click that, I get this little info icon, and I can see the donation, the pledge amount was 100, therefore the donation amount should be 200. After I get all of my automation hooked up, it will do that. So close that. Let's go back. create a second one, donation number 2. I'm going to use a different record, pledge 000 something, 1005. I want slightly different data, different people, different departments. This is 250, double that, and I get 500. So just putting in some demo data, a couple of records that I can leverage when I do the next piece, which is the experience. So I'm done with my tables. I now have 2 tables in this application. And again, App Engine Studio is asking me, experience is typically the next thing you do, so let me help you with that. I've got various experiences. We'll get to mobile in just a second. We'll do that next. A portal allows people to interact with the system in a nice, easy way. The workspace would be more for your fulfillers, the people that are watching, living, eating, breathing this process all the time. And a catalog item would enable our people to create these records very easily from their desktop. So I'm going to choose Workspace because I want to show you some of the configuration tools we've got behind that. Let's go ahead and click Begin. We want to begin our workspace. Give it a name. It's already got a name from the application. Charity stuff. I'm getting less and imaginative as I go. Meanwhile, we wait for the roles to be loading down here. And seeing if there's anything in the chat while I wait for those to roll. What licenses do you need for developing this? For developing applications like this, we currently have a licensing around App Engine, which will give you the capability of App Engine Studio. So I am not going to get deep into licensing here. My generic white picket fence is talk to your account team. This is easy stuff to get, and there are some other capabilities you get with an App Engine license as well. As far as roles, who gets access to this workspace? I am going to just limit it to my internal people. All of my internal employees have this role called SNC Internal. Click Continue. It says, what order would you like the tables when I present them on the lists? I'm going to flip these around just because I've done this a number of times. And it also has to do with the default lists that are on the screen on the home page. So let's make Pledge the primary table and Donation the secondary. And you can have multiple secondary tables if you like. Click Continue. It's going to create a whole bunch of stuff on the back end that used to take longer than this. It used to take a few minutes. This now takes a few seconds, and it has created my workspace. What does that workspace look like? Well, if I click Done, I can see it on the list. Close that out. And under Preview, right here, there's a lot of previews in here. I can take a look, and let's see what that looks like. It's built me out this nice, convenient working space for the agents. Now it's very bare bones at the moment, so we have our lists of pledges. They're not filtered in any way. They're not sorted. I can take care of that. I've got a list of other records, which will take me to all of my pledges, my donations, and I can configure these and make them a little more tailored to what people use on a common basis. What I want to do is go back here and show you how we can configure the workspace. Let's just put a simple visualization up here. The HR department wants to get a little competition going between departments. See who's really donating the most. So I'm going to leave that browser tab open and go back to the App Engine Studio tab. And right next to Charity, where I hit Preview, I can edit. And this brings up UI Builder. And there is a lot to learn about UI Builder, and I am just scratching the surface. But I want to show you how easy it is to do anything from just changing the title on one of these screen components to going deep and creating your own components. So it loads up the page for our charity home. And when it's finished with that, I get a WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get, editor. I'm going to take this middle component here and add a data visualization. So when I click plus and type in data viz, up comes data visualization. And it loads the configurable parameters on the right-hand side to this. First thing I have to do is tell it where I want to get the data from. So I add this data source. I click data source on the right-hand side, and it gives me a couple of suggested tables. Yours may not show this because you probably haven't done this demo several times, but I could also look through the tables by clicking Tables and loading those up. Searching, but we're going to pick the donation table, not the pledge table. Remember, we want the total amounts that have been donated. Gives me some sample records. Does this look right? Yes, it looks right. So let's go and click Add this source in the lower right corner. And it says 2, which isn't terribly helpful. That's not going to help me with my competition at all. So I go over to the right-hand side, and the first thing I want to do is change it from a single score to a donut chart. I've been told by various accounting people that donut charts are the pie charts of the 21st century. Okay, for whatever reason, people love donut charts. And it says there's been one donation for this and one donation for that. And I'm starting to get closer to what I want. But rather than counting the donations, let's go to the metric section and say sum the donations and apply that. Ooh, this is looking better. 200 and 500 now look a little proportionate on that chart. Scroll down a little further, and I want to group them, not by amount, but remember, the competition was between departments. So we can access that from the donation record by drilling through the pledge, through the employee, to the department. This is the power of reference fields and connecting those pieces of data. You cannot get close to this on that spreadsheet. That spreadsheet didn't even have a column for department, and people move around in departments, so it really wouldn't work. So I apply that, and now when I hover over, I want to show the labels. So show metric label. It doesn't let me right now. I want to put a title on there, donations by department. Okay, so I can continue to configure other things on this component, but for now, we'll save that. And if we go back and we can either click open up here, kind of what looks like a URL bar, labeled URL, or we can go back to the one that we left open and refresh the window. We should see our new data visualization in there with the amounts for each department. Development has donated 500 and IT has donated 200. So there we are. We've got a visualization. We're going to leave that workspace open because I'm going to come back to that. UI Builder, very quick introduction to what you can do with it to really tailor that workspace to be more help the people that are using these things every day be more productive. Very powerful stuff. Okay, let's close UI Builder in App Engine Studio and create another experience, a mobile experience, because I want people to be out in the public and be able to pick up their phone and make a donation. So under next to experience, I'm going to click add once again. And this time, I'm going to create a mobile experience. So take a look at that, read it if you like, and click begin when you're ready. It says, here are some of the things we're going to do. Step 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's get started. And I have two options, the mobile agent application and the now mobile application. Functionally, they're very similar. You can build applications for either one without a huge difference in how that development is doing. It's just the persona that we're targeting. So I'm going to pick mobile agent since that's what we recommended at the beginning with the chat links and the URLs and the QR codes that you download, but totally your choice. I won't get into the esoteric nuances of either one of them. We're just doing that one because that's the one I picked for this demo. Under continue, let's pick an icon. A group of people. That feels a little more charity than whatever, well, straight up list. Now the label for this experience, I love this because the mobile app builder is now giving us a direction. It says, what you type here is going to show up at the bottom. Great, so let's type in charity. Again, we'll do the SNC internal role, so our mobile experience is available to all our internal people. I can make this application available offline if I need to. So if you've got a situation where your field technicians or whatever are out of Wi-Fi range or inside of a Faraday cage and they can't get any radio signal at all, they could still use the relevant data and make changes. And when they get back online, sync. Click continue. This is going to be a list. So we'll choose that. Mobile app would be if I wanted to include some other external mobile application. Scroll down a little bit. My font is a little larger, so I have to do a little bit more scrolling than you may see. Your continue button may be right on the screen. Apologize for that. And it says, what table would you like to use? Well, this is the part where the employees are going to get involved with the charity contribution. So we are going to use the pledge table, not the donation table. That's sort of the finished product. and I see all records. Well, I don't know if I want to throw every record of all the history at each employee. So let's add a filter right here in the middle. Adding a filter is easy. We don't have to write any SQL queries. We don't need a database administrator to do this. I want to know where the employee is. Well, it'd be nice if it was me, but I don't want to hard code me into this list. So I use something called isDynamicMe. And this puts my name in when I'm running the app. It puts Abraham Lincoln's name in when Abraham Lincoln is running the app. Makes it very easy. So I've got 2 records in this spreadsheet that were associated with me. They came in, they're now related to my record, and I can get access to those. Okay, now that we've got that down, what do we want to label this? Let's call this my pledges. Tab to get this continue to light up. I don't know why it doesn't light up without that, but that's the way the UI works. Okay, we've built out a very simple mobile experience. I am done adding screens. You can continue to add more mobile screens if you want more lists, you want more things at the bottom. And I am going to show you what that actually looks like on my mobile device as soon as this is done rendering that. Wait. There we are. Before I do that, before I show you the actual product, I want to spotlight one of the new features in the Rome release. Rome is our September 2021 release. So it came out just a few weeks ago as we record this. I can edit this in the Mobile App Builder. Mobile App Builder is available outside of App Engine Studio, but if you've got an App Engine license and you're using AES, it will tie it in right in there, just like Flow Designer, which we'll get to in a minute, just like UI Builder. They were right inside of AES. So everything is all nice in this one working environment. You're not switching between different browser tabs. You're not switching between different windows or menu options and hunting and searching. And it loads up. I didn't scroll out. It didn't look like it was inside AES until I zoomed out a little bit. It's loading up all the different components that it built automatically for us. Now, prior to Mobile App Studio, or Mobile App Builder, excuse me, prior to having this experience to build a mobile app, it was possible, but it got very detail-oriented. We've really streamlined that ability. So I can change the properties on here from an easy-to-use screen. I could go into My Pledges and change that. I can look into the details even deeper for any one of these. But gives you an example of what that looks like on the side. I'm going to show you what it actually looks like. This is not a cooking show. I did not bake this in the oven earlier today. I'm going to log into my PDI. You can see this is real because the time on my phone is exactly the time on my computer. So I'm going to log into my personal developer instance by tapping the instance name up there. And my phone likes to be very slow when I pull it off of the charger. So let's try that again. Always during demos. There we go. And it brings up the mobile agent application. Asks me to log in, which I've done a number of times already. So it remembers that. You don't have to watch me type passwords incorrectly. And it's loaded up all of the meta information around this. Again, I don't need to learn iOS software development kits or Android software development kits. It already helps me go through that with this guided situation. Again, I've written absolutely no code so far. Down in the middle, on the bottom, is my charity icon. Wonderful. There's my pledges. I can see the 2 pledges that are related to me. If I like, I can use this 3 dots in the upper right corner to create a new one. I could drill into any one of these records. Lots of different things you can do with this. This is, again, a starting point for building a mobile app. And yet, I haven't really done any code. This isn't rocket science. It's just putting these pieces together and walking through the guided experience. All right, what turns this from a system of record into a system of action. I don't really care for that word too much, but it's the automation around this. I mentioned one of our first requirements from HR was to get the approval from the manager if a donation was over $100. So what we can do is go under Logic and Automation, right here in the middle. I can either click Add there or Add there, since there's nothing in the list. And it says, hey, there are a lot of common use cases, much like the templates in App Engine Studio on the other tab. There are a lot of common use cases we see for process automation, for these workflows. And I've got some of those. And if we've got integrations installed, if they require an integration, I can see this one's related to Teams, this one's related to Slack. You can send these notifications in different ways. Here are some of the ways that your particular ServiceNow instance is capable of doing that. So we've got some templates. Look for more. Again, if you're watching this in a year or two, then you will probably have more templates than I do here. But again, for demonstration purposes, we're going to build this from scratch. And up comes what we call Flow Designer. This is our primary engine right now for automating a lot of things on the back end. That it came out 4-ish years ago. I forget whether, I think it was late 2017, early 2018. We'll give it a name, New Charity Pledge. And you can add a better description. I've also got some options under here that I want to take a look at. Protection, if you're an independent service software vendor or a partner and you're writing applications, you want to protect your intellectual property, you might want to do that. I am going to change this to system user so that I can bypass some of the back end permissions, make sure that the system is doing what the system needs to do. Not every flow needs to run that way. You probably don't want it. When done, click continue, and it builds me out the basics of what a flow is. Now, a flow is triggered by something. In this case, it's going to be triggered. We'll click Edit Flow. It's going to be triggered by that new pledge record being created. Once that trigger is satisfied, I could put additional conditions on that to say maybe I only want the the pledge records that are created by this department. Maybe I only want the pledge records that are created on a certain date. I could add additional conditions to that. But for this demonstration, I want all new pledge records to flow through this flow, get triggered by this trigger. So just a little background while we were waiting for the form to load. My lips are getting tired. Still got to get this flow built out. So I'm going to add a trigger anytime a record is created. The thing I love about Flow Designer is I can build it faster than I can say it. So I'm actually the slow piece of this demonstration. The table that I'm going to use is my pledge table. So that's my trigger. And when I click done, it actually says pledge created. That's what's going to start this flow. Just because I've been doing software for almost 40 years, I like to save frequently. The other thing I noticed is this table tag. This little call out likes to show up. So if you get annoyed by it, do what I do and just reload that page and it will go away. You'll end up exactly where you were. So do that. You may get also another tour, an option, a modal that pops up that says, hey, do you want to take the tour? So waiting for this to finish loading. It's better than having that tag hanging around. Now I say, what actions should I take when this flow goes? Well, the first thing I want to do is check if the pledge was under $100. If it is, I really don't need to do anything because it's only 100 and over that I need to approve. So I skip the action first and I go to Flow Logic and I say if, over on the right, I've got what's called a data panel. And this will build as I build out my flow because it contains bits of data for my logic, outputs of one action may be useful for the inputs to another, which we'll see that in a little bit. But I can use my trigger record pledge amount is less than 100. Whew. I'm a developer now. This is too easy. Someone should have told me back in college that I wouldn't have to write code. If that is true, then I will go to ServiceNow Core, find Update Record, because I'm going to update that pledge record. It's way easier than scripting. Way easier. I'll take that pledge record, the entire data pill, rather than open it up and go get something. I'll take the pledge record and drop it right onto the record field. It automatically populates the table, and I can say the status is now complete. Don't have to do anything. If you like, take advantage of that comments field and say automatically, I'm not even spelling correctly here today. We'll try. Approved. Amount less than 100. Okay, easy to do. That's pretty much all we need to do if it's less than $100. Now, important thing to point out with Flow Designer, when it finishes one of these little railroad spurs, if you like, if it goes down this condition where it's true, when it gets to the end, it's going to jump back to the next highest level. We're going to take advantage of that in a little bit. But we need to finish out the other side of this equation if it's $100 or more. So let's go to the flow logic and say else. First thing we do is take that pledge record and update it again. Now, I say again, it really hasn't been updated if it came down this branch. But let's go to ServiceNow Core, Update Record. I'm going to take the entire pledge record. And the first thing I want to do is change the status of it. So once this says, hey, I need approval, you kind of want your record to reflect where you are in this process. It's one thing to put the pizza in the oven, but it's another thing to see on your pizza app that it's being baked. If it still said it was being ordered, you go, how long does it take to bake this thing? Are they ever going to bake it? Oh, it just showed up. Why wasn't I invited? So this helps keep things straight. Let's change the status to approval. So anybody looking at that record knows there's an outstanding approval associated with this. And again, you could put the comments in here that says, get manager approval. Now the history of this is pretty much going to tell you the story. Now notice something else. Right here, I'm going to try to zoom in on that. I've got update pledge record and update pledge record. You may find your flow has multiples of these, and it gets very tedious and consuming to open them up to go, what does this one do? What does that one do? I have a little icon over here when I hover over that bar, a speech bubble that says add annotation. And I'm going to say set status to complete on that one. And on this one, I'm going to say set status to, try that again, set status to approval. Now I can glance at these and know what the difference is between them. So thank you to my previous self, or you give thanks in the future. Okay, pledge record's been updated. Let's go actually get an approval. Under action, I'm just tapping that plus sign. Outcomes action. First, second action under ServiceNow Core is ask for approval. It's as easy as this. What record am I approving? I'm going to drag the trigger record again, or I could get this pledge record, which was updated more recently. This is the one from step 4. I see the 4 on the left. Best practice is generally take the most recent one you can, because it may have, come on, not in the table field, in the record field. Drop it where it needs to be dropped. I don't need to worry about these other fields, but down here I say approve when anyone approves. Now, who that is the manager. This is dynamic information. My manager is different than your manager, is different than Jason's manager, is different than Jennifer's manager. So I can either go to this pledge record and drill into the employee and find their manager and blah, blah, blah. But if it's more than one level deep, I generally gravitate towards this. This is called the data pill picker. This strange icon next to the field that you often see. There's one there, there's one there, there's one there. I'm going to say update record, pledge record, and now I can just click faster there. You're saying, Chuck, that's not much faster. It is when you get to this long list of employee fields, because I can type manager, M-A-N, up there, and up comes the manager. This is now a dynamic piece of data. I am done with the approval. What happens when the approval is done? Well, first we're going to save because we've been working for a little bit. Is that pledge record action the same no matter the action number? trying to see if I can wrap my head around that question. The action itself is the same. It always takes the same several parameters. What's the table? What's the record? Let's see if I can click that again and bring up those pieces of data. And then it lets you set the fields. That's what an update record action does. The fields themselves change based on what record I drop in there because it's going to be a different table. Okay, once I've got that, the system is going to stop and ask for an approval from my manager. Until that happens, this flow is really kind of in a sitting around and waiting state. When that approval happens, either a rejection or an approval, then I'm going to check the status of that. So again, under flow logic is where I do my looping and my conditional checking. If, notice down here, ask for approval has some outputs on the data panel. If the approval state, like I said, the data panel is very dynamic. It grows as you build this flow. If it's rejected, okay, I am going to just pull the plug on this. As we say when we're playing Monopoly, do not pass go, do not collect $200. So if that condition is true, then I'm going to do two things. One is update the record. So I now have most recent has some of these. This is very handy if you don't want to keep drilling into these menus every time. We've added most recent. Here's an update record. And I am going to update that same pledge record. Whoop. No, actually I updated it more recently than that, didn't I? No, I didn't. That was the one. Number 4 is the one that set it to approval. I'm going to update it, set the status to rejected. So my pledge record, done, gone. And the comments, we should probably be nice to anyone who's reading this, say rejected by manager, in case it wasn't obvious from the approval field, or the status field. Now, remember what I said about these little railroad spurs? When you're done, it goes to the next highest level. I don't want it to go to the next highest level. I've got other things to do with the pledge records that were approved. So under flow logic, I discovered earlier this year something that says, I can't see it because it's not on the screen there, end. This is the part that terminates the flow. It is completely done if the thing is rejected. That will stop it from going to this next higher level. If it wasn't rejected, then implicitly it's been approved. So I want any and all of these that have been approved to simply update the pledge record. Well, I've already done this once before where I updated the pledge record to approved, or excuse me, complete up here. Update status to complete. One of my favorite icons that I love to abuse whenever I can is this duplicate action. I make a copy of that, and now I have 2 up here. Not exactly what I wanted. Grab the little handlebar and drag it down to, I've got that, somehow that popped open. Don't want that. I want to drag it right there on that little plus. So we'll take 3, drag it down to here, and it becomes the new 9. But if you remember, we had a comment in there that wasn't quite accurate. Yes, it updated the status completely. Approved by manager. That was fast. Duplicate action. Keep that in mind. Even the comment is still correct. So it tells me what's going on. Once that's done, it's going to drop back to this main branch, at which point I can finally create my donation record. So let's create a donation record. Under ServiceNow Core is create record, and I'm going to create that record on the donation table. Set 2 fields. Don't forget to set 2 fields. The pledge, which is going to be related to our trigger record. Boop. There we are. We just related the donation table to the pledge table so that we can do that walking for the reporting, the drilling in. Second thing, the amount. Well, I don't have the amount yet. I want to double the pledge amount. So let's take the pledge amount and put that in there. Oops, I need to set the field first. The field on this record is amount, and the amount I want to use is amount. If I do this and the pledge was $100, the donation will be $100. I'm not done yet. What we've done in some of the later releases is when you hover over this data pill, notice this little FX, this data pill transform function is what we call it. That pops out, And when I click that, I get a little menu. If you wait more than about 3 seconds, click it again. And I have the ability to manipulate that information on the fly. As this information comes in, I'm going to use this math function to multiply times 2. Easy as that. You can stack these up if you like. Maybe you've got a name and you want to take the spaces and split this thing apart based on a delimiter like a space or a comma and take the first one. You can stack these up and do multiple transforms at once. Very easy to do. For this, I'm only going to multiply times 2. Prior to this, prior to the Rome release, I would have had to write about 2 lines of script. So this is new to Rome, that I can do that multiply function. I'm done. Almost done. There's still one more requirement that we want to send this off to the finance group. And if you're following along at home, this is a little bit of cooking show for you. I have a Subflow from our finance team that you don't have on your system, but you could just as easily put a log statement in here or send an email. Sorry, getting a little parched on that one. Final thing I want to do is show you that I can repurpose, excuse me, little subroutines in here because the finance team has graciously given me this Subflow. Try that again. That time I muted for you. And it needs a few inputs. It works just like all the other actions. Tell me what you need, I'll do the hard processing on the back end. And frankly, I don't belong to the finance team. I don't care what they do. They just say, this is what I need to get our accounting system in line. They do their own process. It triggers something great. The employee is going to be pledge record employee. Easy enough. The amount is going to be the donation amount. So I'm going to use the data pill picker here. Donation amount. The charity can also come from the pledge record charity, and comments. Just for fun, let's put something static in here. Ready for processing. They can tell me if it's wrong. Okay, let's save that. We are coming up on the top of the hour and I still... Does the ask for approval action wait for approval or rejection before continuing the flow? Yes. I will show you that right now because we are going to do a test on this thing. One of my favorite features about Flow Designer is you can test this without having to go and create a new record every time. So let's give a quick test. I click test, it says, fine, pick a pledge record. Here's the collection of them that are already processed. So I don't have to, because sometimes it takes quite a while to fill out the form just to trigger a flow. I don't want to have to do that every time, not for a test. Let's pick pledge 14. I see that from the details, it's a $1,600 donation from me. Hey, how generous. And click run test. It goes in the background, it simulates the trigger, it actually bypasses the trigger and does that conditional check. 1,600 is not less than 100, so it is going to ask for an approval. It is setting up a whole bunch of context information. When I see this link that says, your test has finished running, click the execution details. Now, I did have this not work for me once earlier last week, but it is working today. And these are the details. This is where I can see what's happening with that flow. At the top, I can see that it was not less than $100 as I predicted. So it did not automatically update the record to complete. It got down here and said, we're going to go down the else branch. It updated the record. If I click into any one of these, I can see further details to say, oh, yes, the status was moved to approval. And the comments are get manager approval. Wonderful. More details. Close that up. And now I can see it's asked for the approval. The approval is, in fact, waiting. To move that along, I go back to the original interface where we started this whole story an hour ago and type in approval. Under self-services, my approvals, right there. I click my approvals. You go, but Chuck, you can't approve your own thing. You're not the approver. And in fact, I do not have any approvals. So I'll click all on here to remove the filter and show me all the approvals. It's a quick way to get to all approvals. And I noticed this first one, because I sorted in date of reverse date created, is Fred Luddy is approving pledge 1014. Woohoo! I can either right click on this field and say approve, or I could drill into that record. I am an administrator, so I have the ability to do this. That's why I can see this approval. Normally, the system would send out an email, just like any other approval in the system, sends an email to Fred. Fred gets to reply to it, or Fred gets to click back and see some details. But Fred is feeling magnanimous today, as I pretend I'm Fred Luddy, which would be really nice. And he has approved it. If I go back to my other browser tab, it's not going to update automatically for me, but if I flap my jaws for a few more seconds and click refresh, I should see that it has completed the approval. It was not rejected, so it did not go down this dead-end spur. It went to update the record to complete it. It created the donation record. And what I really want to know is, did my little math transform function work correctly? So expand the create record. And in here, it says pledge amount. The actual runtime value was 3,200. That is beautiful. And I can prove that by going back to the workspace. This is why I leave the workspace open, because this widget should now show me sales has taken over, $3,200 in the lead. We still have our development and our IT. So the data visualization record is working. One last thing I want to do before I leave Flow Designer, and I often forget this, we've done this on Live Coding Happy Hour, close that test window, click activate, because right now it's still in this build and development mode and nothing has really been put into action. So I click activate. It says, are you sure? Yes, I want to activate that now. Anytime new records come up, they get processed automatically. Can you set the ask for approval action to wait for a certain number of days and either do something with it or close it? The answer to that is yes, in Flow Designer. Not all approvals do this, but when the ones that are triggered from Flow Designer, you can go to ask approval. There is this due date down here, and I can say automatically cancel after a certain date, after a relative date. I can set it to a date between fields. There's lots of different ways you can do this. So this was something that we often added on for many, many customers to say, what do I do with all these approvals that have been sitting around for 90 days, 180 days? Can I put some sort of scheduled job on there? And that was one of the first things I did as a customer as well, because approvals were just kind of collecting. And people say, well, I never saw the email. I say, yeah, the system sent it to you. You may have been sent to spam or something. So yes, you can put your own automated process onto those approvals. Great question, by the way. That is pretty much what I came here to build out. Couple other things I want to show you real fast. We've got about 60 seconds left in here. In App Engine Studio, I have the ability to add collaborators. One of the things we were asked for in the first release in March of 2021 was I need better governance and I need more collaboration. So we've added the ability to say Abraham Lincoln, for example, is going to be a contributor and an owner. And you can configure what these roles are and what they can do. So if I want somebody that's just in UI Builder, I can make a UI Builder role. When I hit send, it goes into a request. Somebody's got to approve that so that Abraham Lincoln just doesn't automatically have access to this. The other thing is source control. I can link this up to a Git repo of some type and have multiple versions. So if somebody is developing on version 2 and we discover a bug in version 1, we can go back to version 1 without disrupting the flow of how things are maintained going forward. So source control, very powerful. And then when this is ready to go, I hit publish, and my instance is not currently hooked up to this, but with a few details, this would go into that publish mode. It goes to an approval. The administrators of the system can review the application, do the testing on it, make sure that it's functioning the way they want so that it's not going out into the ether or going into production, not the ether, going into production with some potential issues that may cause data problems. All right. Real quick, thank you very much for joining me. We have done a lot in the last few minutes, including importing a spreadsheet, converting that to a couple of data tables, mobile experience, desktop experience. I hope I've injected some excitement to you, shown you how easy it is to digitize these processes, get a lot of extra productivity out of your system, and I have written Zero code today. That's the important part. Thank you much for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you again real soon. Everybody take care and be safe. Bye-bye.